Magandang araw po sa ating lahat, mga kaibigan. Mapalad tayong lahat na magkakasama na naman ngayon sa ating tapatan sa Aristocrat. Bilang panimula sa taong 2014, minabuti po naming anyayahan ng ilang mga kilalang taong magbabahagi ng kanilang mga pananaw sa mga magaganap ngayong taon. Para kay Lucy Arguelles na Manila Bulletin, wala po kaming inanyayahang mga manghuhula sapagkat karamihan po ng kanilang hula na magaganap noong 2013, hindi nangyari. Okay. Marami po nagsabi. So, kasama po natin ngayon si Ginoong Donald D., Vice Chairman ng Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Narito rin po si Ginoong Norman Cabrera, Secretary General ng Kapatiran. Si Father Benito Tuazon, Minister ng Ministry of Ecology ng Archdiocese of Manila. At si Atty. Perfecto Yasay Jr., dating Chairman ng Securities and Exchange Commission. Ano-anong trahedya ba ang tumama sa ating bansa noong nakalipas na taon? Mula sa pagkakasangkot ng mga alagad ng batas sa sinasabing Atimonan Massacre na hanggang ngayon ay wala pang linaw kung nagpakamatay ba yung mga napaslang, yung pagkamatay ng pinakamalaking buhaya sa daigdig na si Lolong, yung impeachment ni Chief Justice Renato Corona, pagwawagi ng mga hindi inaasahang kandidato noong midterm elections. Okay? At dala yan ng controversial na PCOS machines. Mabuti pa raw yung nagwi-withdraw sa ATM, may resibo. Pag boto mo, hindi mo alam kung nabilang yung boto mo. Okay? Pero that's another case. Nagkaroon ng State of the Nation Address ang Pangulong Benigno Simeon C. Aquino III noong Hulyo. Nagkaroon ng sigalot sa Zamboanga noong Setyembre, lumindol noong nakalipas na Oktubre, at binagyo tayo noong Nobyembre. Dinagukan pa ang may 5,200,000 electric consumers ng Meralco, at tumaas pa ang presyo ng kuryente, tumaas pa ang presyo ng gasolina at LPG. So, sa mga pangyayaring ito, bumagsak din yung stock exchange at di pa nakababalik sa 7,000 points na natamo noong kalahatian ng taong 2013. Tumaas daw ang foreign direct investments sa ilang bahagi ng 2013. Tuloy pa rin ang paglalakbay ng mga kababayan natin patungo sa ibang bansa, naghahanap ng mas magandang pagkakakitaan. Sabi nga nila, looking for greener pastures. Subalit, sa likod po nito, mga kaibigan, may mga Pilipinong umuwi. Mula po naman sa Sudan, sa Yemen, sa Egypt, at sa Syria. Okay. All right. Sa mga nagaganap na ito, anong maaasahan sa 2014? Ang tema natin ay 2014, happy nga ba? Simulan po natin ang talakayan. I'd like to make a correction. Norman Cabrera is now President of Kapatiran and Secretary General of Gunless Society. But the statistics today prove that tumaas yung tinamaan ng stray bullets sa pagdiriwang ng bagong taon. No? Pag-uusapan din natin yan. So simulan natin ang ating talakayan. At ano bang mga paksa, ano bang mga issue at ating pagkukwentuhan. Siguro, matanong ko muna sa Ginoong Donald D. Donald, how encouraging is the business climate for 2014?
No, the economy as a whole is something that we are very positive about because in spite of all the litany of problems that you have mentioned locally, the fact is the Philippine economy is anchored only on the BPO industry, the electronic industry, and the remittances of the OFW. So, given these three, you see continuous inflow of foreign funds into our country, and therefore the economy will again be consumption-led. Now, this is everybody saying we are very happy, our economy is growing, but we have to tell you that we are in business. We are not happy because we think it's a very shallow growth based only on consumption. We are looking to in the coming years to convert the economy into real growth, meaning creating more jobs, having an industrial policy that will be able to sustain the high population growth rate that we have.
Okay. Given such a picture, Jun Yasay, as former SEC chairman, do you see telltale signs of encouraging situation in our economy?
Hardly. I agree with everything Donald has said. Because if you look at our performance, and I'd like to underscore that he said that we really have just catered to a consumer-based economy without really giving the people themselves the opportunity for wealth creation and even the dispersal of wealth. No? Now, bakit yan ang nangyayari? Now, we're saying na we have to anticipate na masaya ba yung ating 2014? Ang hindi magiging maligaya ang 2014 dahil yung karapat-dapat nating gagawin sa 2013 at 2012 hindi natin ginawa. That would have augured well for a brighter future for 2014, but we did not do that. So we will see the very same problems that will recur all through the years. Alam mo, maliit pa ako naka-short pants pa ako nagmamarcha kami mga aktivista dyan sa I'm not almost 70 years old, but we were mouthing the same pleas for the distribution of wealth. Gumawa tayo ng land reform. Land reform has been a failure. We try to solve our problems with electricity. We still see the opposite of providing for sufficient electrical power, but at a high cost to our people. Why? Because we have not undertaken the fundamental changes that we would need. Now, sinasabi ng mga nationalistic people, kailangan wag natin i-amenda yung konstitusyon dahil kailangan sa Pilipino ito. But you see, when we had the 1935 Constitution, sinasabi natin na all of these essential things, strategic areas of the economy, ownership of lands, ownership of public utilities, this should be reserved for Filipinos. Without realizing that at that time, when you talk about Filipinos, only 10% of the Filipinos, or even less, would have the capacity to really develop agriculture, would really have the capacity to develop our public utility services. So the 90% or even more Filipinos did not have that opportunity. Therefore, what we see now is a monopoly by Filipinos themselves. That's why we're not growing. That's why I think basically we should change fundamental structures to augur well for a brighter future.
Okay, let me ask you, John. That being the case, parang sinasabi mo, pinakamasaya lang rito yung SM.
Yeah, exactly. Nakikita mo ngayon, agricultural lands. The alarming rate at which agricultural lands are converted into commercial lands is very high. And why? Because when you give the farmer their 7 hectares of property, hindi nila ma-develop yun. Wala silang support. They don't have the money. So what will they do? It's better for them to cash in on that by having somebody make sure that there is conversion and they sell that. And so you see, you ride along South Superhighway, yung mga farmlands, they practically vanish. They're made into real estate development. But then you see the market for real estate development never benefits the poor people.
Okay, another point, John. Do you see the economic bubble bursting?
I think so. Because the economy in the Philippines is real estate based, and who are our markets? OFWs, and then the high ends, which are also foreign. When you cut that source, if the fundamentals of our economy will not inspire them to continue bringing in money, that bubble will burst.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Father Benny. Katulad niyan, in the name of development, meron na naman mga itatayo na mga gusali mula sa reclamation. No less than the bishop said something about it. Pero hindi yata kayo pinakikinggan.
Well, basta nagsasalita kami. Yun ang mahalaga doon. Ngayon,
pag hindi na kayo nagsalita, problema na yun.
Kasi in the future, we look at the future, basta yan ang huhusgahan ng kasaysayan, di ba? Basta nagsalita kami na yan ay bagamat it will give us a lot of benefits in terms of economics, pero ang danger niyan, ang threat niyan sa kalikasan at sa buhay ng tao, napakalaki. Kaya nga, nakakatakot na, you'll be there yun sa reclamation part na yan, at tapos may mangyari, like halimbawa, lindol, o kaya may bagyo, kung may
Typhoon
may
surge.
bagyo, yan.
Daluyo.
Kasi tatlo yung actually yung dyan yung danger yung storm surge pag may bagyo, yung liquefaction na sinasabi, yung liquefaction ay yung pag-liquefy ng sand sa ilalim na pwedeng magpaguho. Tapos yung aquifers na nasa ilalim ng lupa na empty, pag yan ay nawala, so magiging hollow yon. Sa bigat ng mga nasa ibabaw, pwedeng bumagsak. So, we are really courting dangers. Ang sinasabi, bakit yan nire-resist samantalang sa ibang bansa nagre-reclaim naman? Ang Macau, halimbawa, pwedeng mag-reclaim kasi nga wala na silang lupa. Pero ang Pilipinas, napakaraming lupa sa loob. Why are you reclaiming? We have so many lands. Kaya in relation to what Tony Yasay say, I was agreeing with him. Kasi nga, nakakalungkot. Kasi ako, I am a advocate of agriculture. The Philippines is an agricultural country. If there's something that will make us progressive, I've been saying this all along, it's in agriculture. Ang problema, the support in agriculture is not there. Actually, meron, kaya lang hindi naman napupunta.
Token.
Oo, token, tsaka minsan hindi napupunta. Di ba? Like yung 700 million na, ganon, no? Samantalang kailangan natin ng industry. We need an industry. It will propel us to progress. Kaya lang, pag hindi yung industry na yan na angkop para sa atin, ang sinuportahan natin, mahihirapan tayo, no? So, yun ang kaya nakakalungkot kasi nga, lack of government support, walang irrigation, walang crop insurance, yung farm to market roads and all of these things, kung nandyan lang yan, the Philippines will really be a progressive country. I think as far as agriculture is concerned.
Very well. Norman, accidental tourist ka sa Bangkok sometime ago.
Yes.
Oo. So, ano nakikita mo? Malayo na ba ang Bangkok sa Manila o malayo ang agwat natin sa Bangkok?
Well, from my observation, siguro I would estimate that we may be about 20 years behind Bangkok. No?
Despite the coups and
yeah.
the attempted coups.
Yeah, 20 years, no? But I think ang talagang the real problem we have in the Philippines is really politics. No? The biggest bane in our life as a nation and the most pernicious obstacle to our achieving full human development. No? Ang ibig sabihin nito, the reason may problema tayo sa ekonomiya, the reason may problema tayo sa negosyo, the reason may problema tayo sa agriculture, the reason may problema tayo sa mga reclamation, it is because of politics. No? And ang tama na natatanggap natin sa klase ng politika sa ating bansa ay yung graft and corruption na nangyayari.
Okay.
Yung graft and
So,
corruption.
may investment para ma-elect, ganon.
Yes, and
So, dapat may ROI.
graft and corruption in government. Like for instance, yung 2014 national budget natin, roughly 30% dyan is already allocated to interest payments, yung mga automatic appropriations, no, sa mga utang nating pambansa. So, ibig sabihin, yung 70% na lamang ang naiiwan for public services. Anong ilang observation natin na makikita dito sa 2014 budget natin out of the 70 centavos for every 1 peso that is left, no, for government spending? Yung 50%, no, nung 70%, no, the way we budget things, ay pork barrel ng presidente. No? Ang ibig sabihin, ito ang mga gastusing nakalaan, hindi naka-regionalize, hindi identified kung saan dadalhin. You talk of school buildings, for instance, no? Hindi naka-identify kung saan dadalhin at eventually nasa desisyon ng presidente kung saan dadalhin. So andyan yung political patronage din, no?
Okay.
But the way I see it, 2014 will be a very defining year for the Philippines and for Philippine politics.
Okay.
Uh,
Why?
Kasi merong mga hakbang na ginagawa tayo ngayon upang ma-address, no, ang corruption, katiwalian sa pamahalaan. At napakahalaga nito. Around roughly 40% of our national budget is lost to corruption. Nung lumabas yung Napoles, sabi na we realize na there are times na 100% ng kaba ng bayan nawawala pa rin sa corruption. So, this is a very important data, no? Na ibig sabihin sa bawat piso na dapat ay pumupunta ginagastos for public services, 40 centimos ay nawawala.
Okay.
No? Napakahalaga nito dahil nandyan yung kakulangan na nananatili, no, sa pagbibigay ng serbisyo ng gobyerno sa health, sa housing, sa education. Kasama na dyan yung public infrastructure, no? Okay. And when you talk of public infrastructure, may epekto ito sa business climate, no? Roads, no, yung
Bridges,
transportation, all of these things may epekto sa
What you're saying is, this infrastructure parang instant fracture? Hindi maaasahan?
hindi maaasahan. Oo.
Despite the image of the Secretary ng Public Works na honest and sincere in delivering the jobs.
Correct.
Kaya lang ang problema yung bank houses ngayon, mukhang overpriced. Ganun ba yan?
Yes.
Okay. Well said. Nabanggit po yung ekonomiya, yung impact ng infrastructure. May infrastructure ba na pakikinabangan ang kalakal?
Hello, ang basic problem dito sa bansa natin, and you can see this by the way we do our budget. Tama yung sinasabi ni Father at nila, ano. You know, dito sa atin walang master plan. And there's no master plan. None of us, kami po sa ng negosyo, hindi namin alam kung saan kami tatayo. You talk about infrastructure, bigla na lang they will focus on farm to market road. Nung 5 years ago, review namin yan. Ang ginagawa nila, puro dirt road. You know, so pagdating ng rainy season, wash out lahat yan. Wala na naman yan. Naglagay sila ng dryer. Lahat ng mga dryer na linagay nila, wala na ngayon. So, but there's no plan. There should be a master plan for as long as nakikita mo sa the way we budget na puro na lang yung nga sinasabi na puro lang pinap ng ngayon sa executive, now everything is behest, we are in big trouble.
All right. Given such a scenario, Donald, ito ba yung sinasabi na lahat ng balak ng gobyerno ay medium term, walang long term? Yun ba yun?
Mukhang ano, it's even worse than that. It's political realities. It's not a medium term or long term. You know, look at what we're doing. We are throwing, binabato natin sa tao what they call this cash transfer.
Oh.
What kind of a program is this? You know, 60 billion of cash transfer. I mean, first of all, I don't even know if they can identify kung kanino pumunta yan.
May I add on to that?
Sige nga.
In fact, you know, this is a very interesting item to study, ano. Yung 2014 GAA natin, and of course, yung mga nakararaang General Appropriations Act, but we would like to focus now on the 2014 GAA. Kung pag-aaralan natin ang constitutional provisions, specific constitutional provisions on the budget and existing laws, no, on our budgeting process, makikita natin na ang daming constitutional violation ng GAA 2014 at saka violation on existing laws. Gusto ko lang dagdagan yung sinabi ni Mr. D dito na wala tayong long-term budget. Sa existing law natin, napakaliwanag na dapat merong linkage yung current budget sa long-term budget, no? At napakaliwanag naman sa Constitution natin na yung regional development councils, no? Na kailangan ito ay operative at kailangan yung development planning mo should be structured by region.
Kaya bumabalik ako dun sa 2014 GAA natin, sinabi ko 50% of what is spent net of the automatic appropriations for debt payment and interest payments, a presidential port. This is certainly not reflective of regional planning. Tapos walang linkage sa long term. So, ang isang pinag-aaralan po natin ay sampahan ang kaso sa Supreme Court, no? Ang constitutional violation at law violation ng 2014 budget para yung lahat ng presidential port dapat ma-identify yan kung saang region nakalagay at hingin natin kung ano yung long-term plan na to which that 2014 GAA is linked to.
Maganda itong banggit ninyo. Pero may isa pa sapagkat listening to what Malacanang has been saying, everything is okay. Dahil lang sa yung development sa Mindanao will come to reality with the coming signing of the agreement between the MILF and the GPH. Attorney Yasay, do you have anything to say about it? Will this bring peace and development to Mindanao?
Oh, I have no debate or argument with anybody that we really have to earnestly resolve the root causes of rebellion and unrest in Mindanao, particularly amongst our Muslim brothers. Our only problem here is that when we do it because not of a really sincere desire to make sure that we have an enduring, lasting peace that will come about, but we're doing this for political expediency for the most part. Now,
how's that?
Mayroon tayong agreement na with MILF. Okay, maraming dahilan kung bakit hindi nagtagumpay yung peace agreement na yan. But for the most part, ang dahilan dyan was because from the very beginning, Malaysia and the MILF did not like that. Why? Because MNLF wanted primarily to support our claim to Sabah. MILF did not want it. Now, MILF from the very beginning, when we entered into that peace agreement, sought to undermine that, tried to make sure that that peace agreement will collapse, will not succeed. And then, of course, because of other confluence of other factors, including graft and corruption, including incompetency of the leadership that MNLF also provided for the ARMM, then the peace agreement, the objectives of the peace agreement did not come about. And then you had the MILF that from the very beginning fought and really called for secession, rebellion, and segregation of Mindanao from the government. And then all of a sudden we say, now we should negotiate with them. This to me is very, what do you call this, highly irregular. Because you're just doing this simply because one nation is saying that, kami na bahala dyan sa MILF, we'll make sure that peace would be restored. And then you carve out a system that is not even within the ambit of the Constitution. You are putting the cart in front of the horse by entering into this kind of an agreement with MILF, with Bangsamoro, where you will say that they will have a system of government that is not unlike, or that is much unlike the local government setup that our Constitution allows. You give them authority to exploit natural resources where the national government will only get 75% and 25%, and they get what about the other Filipinos in that area who are also, part of Mindanao? So this to me is the problem. Why are you trying to solve a situation and then you create another problems? You create another. Right now, kailan tumatahimik mga Kristiyano dyan sa Mindanao? Ay dahil sinasabi nga nila, wala pa naman We're just in the negotiating process. But by the time we will come up with an organic law, by the time that a ratification of the Constitution will come about, the troubles will come in. And then if we cannot deliver on our commitments with MILF now, and I'm not saying this negatively against MILF, no, I'm just saying this as I see the policy of government. When we cannot deliver on that because we could not pass the Constitution, or even if we pass the Constitution, the Christian community in Mindanao will be left out, will also, or the MNLF will again
Get into the
destabilize, we get into the picture, then you are not solving the problem. So I think before we can even proceed with forging a lasting and enduring peace in Mindanao with Bangsamoro, we must first make sure, one, the Muslims can get their act together. They must act as one people. They must identify, and they must, what are their basic problems, what are the basic needs, and they must also accept the fact that they are Filipinos as much as we are. They should not be governed by a special set of rules. You have two systems of justice, under Sharia law, and then under the justice system of the Philippines. Hindi maganda yun eh. And then you proudly proclaim, oh, this will work because we have an asymmetric relationship with the Philippine government. When you talk about asymmetric relationship, you're talking about a dysfunctional relationship. It's not a harmonious relationship.
Okay.
How can we achieve lasting peace on that?
Okay. Anong impact nito sa business kung uncertain yung kapayapaan? Hindi lang sa Mindanao, kung hindi sa iba pang bahagi ng bansa. Donald.
Nakikita naman natin we have a very poor record as far as investment is concerned. Nakikita niyan that this is the effect. We live with this, when we have been living with this for the past, I don't know, I started when I was 20, I'm now also close to 70, and still singing the same song. You're really talking of a dysfunctional country. Mindanao, you said power crisis. The president, when there was a power crisis in Mindanao, said we will put 200 megawatts of small power generation all over Mindanao. So you ask the DE or whoever to implement it. It never got implemented because those people down there could not agree on who's going to be the one to implement it. What is this? So you ask me what's the effect? The effect is what we have now. We have no investments in industry. You have no job opportunity. People have to go out of the country to earn a living. And what's worse, you now have a nation of Pentecost people just waiting for their relatives to send in money here so they can spend it in SM and the other malls. That's the whole problem now.
Okay. With all the malls being put up across the country, what impact have you seen on small and medium industries and enterprises?
We have helped the economy of China because we're buying all their goods. We're not helping our economy. SME, what SME are you talking here? I go all over the country. I try to support. Right now, government is saying we will have to join the free trade agreement. Okay, they say, and they're expanding the organization within DTI in order to be able to negotiate. I say yes, okay. You want to negotiate that? Let's also do at the same time, change of policy that will empower the SMEs in order that they can be competitive. Bill Luz is not here. I'd like to congratulate Bill Luz. He has done a very good job as far as showing to the world that we are changing our processes. Because yung mga World Competitiveness Report is all based on process. So he has done a very good job, and we've been going up the ladder by leaps and bounds. In fact, we're the fastest country that has grown from a very low third quadrant to now we're almost in the middle, and hopefully we'll go up. But is that going to generate investment? No. Why? Because we don't solve our energy problem. We have a very serious energy problem. Are you going to invest in a country when you're not even sure that 3 years from now, when your factories are already in place, that you have enough energy?
That is a good question.
Those are the things. Now you'd ask me why? Why? Because the present core of players in the industry control the policy of this country. They will not allow other players to come into the sector. That is the problem.
Thank you. Norman.
Okay. Sa aming pananaw,
Sa totoo lang, simple lang yung problema ng ating bayan eh. Simple lang. Una, dapat maisabatas natin yung prohibition on political dynasty.
That's number one.
Paano ipapasa yun? Magpapasa yung mga may kamag-anak. Sila yun.
That is why I said that 2014 may be a defining moment for Philippine politics. No?
Okay.
Okay. Noong 2012, pinag-aralan namin yung batas tungkol sa People's Initiative, particular on the enactment of a national legislation. Okay, not an amendment to the Constitution, but an enactment of national legislation. Nung una naming tiningnan yan, meron kaming isang nakitang konting kakulangan na kailangan bigyan pa ng hakbang ng COMELEC para dun sa implementing rules and regulations. At ito yung prescribed form, no, ng petition to enact a national legislation. Gusto naming mawalan lahat ng mga legal impediments along the way kasi alam namin maraming ku-question dyan, maraming
Sigurado.
lalaban yan.
Yeah.
Una yon, no? Pangalawang pangangailangan bago namin ipagpatuloy yung advokasya tungkol dyan sa People's Initiative on the abolition of political dynasty. Sabi namin, because of ang requirement kasi para magkaroon ng referendum, no? Pagboto ng batas, na kung saan kung majority of the people will vote on that law, hindi na kailangang dumaan yan sa Kongreso at aprubahan ng presidente. Okay. Pero ang malaking hamon dito ay yung pagkuha ng pirma, no, ng mamamayan na kung saan kailangan at least 10%
ng mga botante
ng
sa
mga
bawat
botante.
distrito.
Oo. Pero ang mas mahirap pa dito, kasi yung 10% madaling kunin yan eh. No, pero ang mas mahirap yung sub-requirement na 3% per legislative district. No? So, dahil sa sub-requirement na ito, nakita namin na for any people's initiative to succeed, no, we need the assistance or the help of an institution in the Philippines that has literally a nationwide network. And next to government, the only institution I can think of that has a nationwide network is the Catholic Church. Okay. It is for this reason that in January of this year, no, we wrote the Catholic Bishops' Conference of the Philippines, no, about this undertaking that we are doing, and we sought support from them.
And what has been the response?
And following their plenary session in January 28, 2013, they released their pastoral statement saying that if Congress will not pass this law, no, we will support initiatives by the lay faithful to pass an enabling law prohibiting political dynasty through people's initiative. Okay. Napakagandang hakbang niyan, ano? And ang sumunod na naganap dito through the relevant commission of the CBCP, which is the CBCP NASA, no, under Bishop Abilio, he convened a number of people's organizations advocating the prohibition of political dynasty so that these groups can come up with a common law. No, ang pinaka-importante kasi dito, ma-define mo ano ba, how are you going to define political dynasties? What are the parameters of prohibition? And finally, ito ay napag-agrihan ng mga organisasyon ito, and we call ourselves now People's Coalition, People's Initiative Coalition Against Dynasty or PICAD.
Okay.
No? Okay. Now, this is now an ongoing thing, no? And we are trying to reach out to all bishops. This has been communicated to all bishops. Of course, there's...
Are you optimistic you'll get the green light?
Well, we already had the green light. No?
Okay.
So the question now is, will the Catholic Church match their words with action?
Okay.
No?
Let's leave it at that. Thank you. Yes, June, would like to react?
I have no serious objections to addressing the problem of political dynasties or even addressing the problem of graft and corruption. But I think all of us should understand that these are merely manifestation of a more fundamental problem. dynasties have evolved here in the Philippines precisely because of a much deeper problem. And what is that? What is that problem? It is the problem where our political structures engender a preservation of the old economic structure. And this is precisely what's causing it. When you have political leaders who also have the economic power within their hands, then they will have the tendency to perpetuate that amongst themselves. So if you come up with a constitutional amendment and say, oh, political dynasties is prohibited. Even if you prohibit that, there will be other manifestations of the same problem that will perpetuate the underlying deeper problem, which is the exploitative economic conditions engendered by a political system that we have adopted. Remember, when the Americans came in, they gave us democracy, but they never really dismantled the old economic structures that is still manifesting itself today.
Or would you rather have a monarchy?
No, definitely not. I would follow with what we're saying here, that yes, let's address graft and corruption. Let's address political dynasties. But then if we are going to go into people's initiative in amending the Constitution directly because Congress and our leaders have failed to do it by themselves, then we must also educate our people and tell them that the deeper problem is this. We should include this in our people's initiative so that we will really make sure that we are able to solve the problem. I do not really think that our problem is as easy as we think they are. It is so complicated, and we need a lot of things to do to solve them.
Okay.
If I
Probably
can add
one
to
of
that-
them is exorcism. No?
If I can add to that, just think of this, no? Kung meron tayong legislated law prohibiting political dynasty, number 1. If the freedom of information is legislated, number 2. Number 3, if we have a budget reform act, no, addressing the pork barrel system and the linkage to long-term government planning in government, no. And number 3, addressing the peace and order situation in the country via a strict gun control. 4 na legislation. Where do you think will this bring us? Will this bring us to the same place where we are now? Or will this bring us to a better place? Especially when you're looking at 2016. Now, if we are not able to address the problem of political dynasty in 2016, we will have the same people running this country.
All right. We will open the floor to questions from the media who are with us today. Pero siguro, dagdagan natin yung talakayan. Binanggit nyo na walang pagbabago since you were young. And I join you with that. I'm not that young anymore. Pero, anong factor meron yung pakikipagkaibigan ng Amerikano sa Pilipinas? We've been a show window of American democracy in Asia. Why haven't we moved forward? Bakit nauna pa yung Japan na ginera at pinulbos ng Amerikano noon? Nasaan ang sense of history natin? Jun.
Yeah, dahil ang nagiging reaction natin is that masyado tayo nagiging American boy lahat, no? When we look at the national interest, we look at it from the perspective of American interest. We forget that first and foremost, unahin natin yung atin. We should address our problems on the basis of our own national interest. Maganda yung ginawa ng Amerikano sa atin, pero look at what they did not do, which is very important. They did not dismantle the exploitative economic structures because ang paniwala nila, the only way for them to consolidate power over the Philippines was to get hold of those who already had the structures of power in their hands. Mas madali nila yung ano yun. Now, sa atin, sumakay naman tayo. No, enjoy naman that. Sinabi ng Amerikano, the best way you could do this is have a government run like hell by Filipinos and run like hell by the Americans. We forgot that it was not in the interest of America to make us part of the United States. It was more important for us to really honestly think at that point in time na yung nationalistic tendency or nationalistic sentiment would really benefit us, would really promote the national interest.
Okay.
And when we said everything, means of production, public utilities, strategic areas of commerce be left to the hands of the Filipinos, we forgot na wala tayong capacity niyan. And yung konti lang sa atin na mayayaman had the economic power to develop all of this. So it's really very important, as what we've said here earlier, we open up. Wag tayong matakot. Hindi naman itatakbo ng mga dayuhan yung ating lupa. Hindi naman matatakbo ng dayuhan ng ating mga public utilities. The most important thing is we should remember is this. Whoever will be granted the opportunity to develop these resources and services must be such that they would be able to provide the quality goods and the efficient services at the least cost
Okay.
of the people.
Well said. Donald, let me ask you. Binanggit mo, wala tayong industriya. Wala tayo dahil lahat mula sa China. Anong pinakaugat nito? Wala bang mga magagaling na Pilipino na kailangan angkatin natin ito? O mas mura lang talaga yung mula sa ibang bansa? And how has smuggling in the Philippines changed over the years?
Wala po ang situation dito, sabi ko nga, kontrolado ng ilan mga mabibigat at malalaking mga grupo sa basic industry. Ang problema dito sa bansa natin, wala tayong basic industry. Wala tayong steel manufacturing, wala tayong plastic industry,
Plastic na tao meron.
madami yun. Pero
Okay.
yun yung nangyari. Sinabi nyo, why are we going with the Americans? I don't know. All I can tell you is from my own experience, ang Amerika, kung gusto na talagang lumapit ang isang bansa sa kanila, and I take China as an example. In my younger years, I was in textiles. And in the 60s and 70s, okay, the textile industry, you want to survive, you have to have export quota or quotas given by the Americans so that you can enter their market. Never. Even when Tita Cory went to the United States upon assumption of the presidency, I was with her then. They did not give us additional market access or additional quotas. But in the case of China, when President Nixon wanted to become closer to China, to engage China, they gave China all the textile quota. In the period of 3 years, China, a country that was not even a significant exporter of textiles and garments, became the major exporter of textiles and garments.
Really?
Yes, you can see that's historical, and you can ask the Chinese. Sa kanila, they're very simple and very practical in their diplomatic approach. Kaya hindi ko maintindihan, inaaway natin yung makakatulong sa atin. Malapit tayo din sa kabila. Anong binibigay sa atin ng kabila? Mutual defense? Yun lang nga. Ano ba naman to? Do I have to say more? Just look at it.
Okay. Well said. Padre Benny, sabi, normally kasi ang mga pare, magbibigay ng magandang perspective at pag-asa. Bukas puro misteryo sa hapis ito, sa mga nagro-rosaryo. Wala bang misteryo ng tuwa at luwalhati?
Gusto ko na nga mag-resign bilang pare. Kasi sa linggo-linggo, nag-homily ka, parang walang nakikinig, di ba? Tapos minsan nga, may nagtanong sa akin, Father, Pasko pa pala, sabing gano'n. Sabi ko, ang tagal ko ng pinipreach na hanggang Baptism of the Lord, hanggang next Sunday pa yung Pasko. So, sabihin, hindi talaga nakikinig. Actually, we're really making a lot of reflections among the priesthood. Although we know na change comes from the person kasi. You cannot make a person change. The person himself must make the change. So we can only do so much. Pero even then, on the part of the church, kami nga, Pope Francis is really leading the way, and he is really, wala siyang, kung mapapansin lahat ng statements niya, talagang bugbog na kami mga pare. Actually, ang tinitira niya.
Sunog na po kayo.
Ako, pakaramdam ko, bugbog na ako. Kada statement niya, talagang sa sarili. Hindi naman sa mga laity na Parang what he's saying is, we have to blame ourselves, look at ourselves. Are we that effective? Ano ba yung mga dapat pansinin? So, yun ang feeling ko nga, bugbog na ako. So, sabi ko, yun nga, although we believe that change should come from the people, from you, we on our part, ano yung aming magagawa sa araw-araw, kada linggo, no? But, we can only be faithful to what the gospel tells us to do, no? Improve our homilies, be more attentive to the people, try to help government, etc. Ginagawa yan. But yun nga, just would like to tell you na ang simbahan ay nagre-reflect sa sarili niya. We are doing our own reflections, and hopefully we can be more relevant, and we can communicate to the people what should be communicated. Kasi yung mga pinag-uusapan kanina dito, ano ba yung problema, ano yung problema, as far as the church is concerned, no, ang nakita namin, yung values ng tao mahalaga Now all of this can be solved, no, even though you have all of these laws na sinasabi niya maipasa, hanggat hindi nagbabago yung pagpapahalaga ng tao, we can go around the law. We have been doing that. We have all the capacity to go around the law. Like for example, alam nyo, just to give you an example, meron ng revised Penal Code, RA 10592, katitingin ko lang, which is now inuupuan ngayon. Ano ito? Yung nire-reduce na yung prison term ng mga may good behavior. Ang dami na nating matatanda doon sa prison. And yet the DOJ and the DILG are sitting on it. Walang IRR hanggang ngayon. Samantalang may iba pinalalaya nila. Pero ang dami sa mga prisoner natin hanggang ngayon, approve na itong long to, IRR na lang kailangan. Nakakaawa, mamamatay na sila doon sa prisoner. So what I mean is, there are things like this na sana...
So basic.
It's really basic. Yeah. So yun, we are blaming ourselves. So kami mismo sa simbahan, we are blaming ourselves. We are not freeing ourselves from the responsibility. Our prayer is that people will respond and help us so that we can do something about this basic problem.
Yeah. Short reaction from Norman before we open the floor.
Oh yes. Siguro dun sa sinabi ni Father na yung kailangan baguhin natin yung values natin. Ako ang paniwala ko, may pangangailangan din, and it has to be a parallel effort, no? Na baguhin din natin yung ating lipunan, no? Because sometimes yung values natin is what we do, how we act is a function of our surroundings, of our society. Marami tayong nakikita na mga Pilipino, pag pumunta sa ibang bansa, mahusay ang environment doon, nakaka-adapt sila, no? At mas magagaling pa. Dito, halimbawa yung traffic natin, 'di ba? Singitan, no? Kahit ako, pagka ako makikipagsingitan din ako. Yun yung kapaligiran And what I am trying to say here is that there is economics in legislation. No? There is good economics in good legislation. At one way para magkaroon ng pagbabago yung uri ng lipunan natin ngayon, kailangan meron tayong mga batas na dapat
Norman, let me remind you, there is business in legislation. All right? We have questions from the floor. Lucy, Donggong, and anybody else? Got questions from the audience, from our friends from the media? Madam Sol Vancy, if you have some questions. Now, siguro, Jun, let me ask you. Coming from SEC some years ago, ano yung gusto ng mga negosyante sa isang lugar para magsimula ng kalakal o ng korporasyon?
Alam mo, let me speak for the small businesses, no? Mga maliit na korporasyon. Ang pinakamabigat nila na problema ngayon sa atin ay source of funds, source of capital. Yung mga bangko natin ngayon are oriented in such a manner na they're the least favored insofar as the granting of loans for business development is concerned. Dahil yung risiko nga naman, malaki. You know? But, negosyo ng bangko yan but yet, kahit na hindi nagpapautang ang bangko ngayon, nakikita natin na ang bangko ay kumikita ng gusto, hindi dahil sa traditional lending of money, but more importantly doon sa mga, what do you call this, accessorial businesses that they undertake, which is like credit card, na yung interest ay 3.5%, ay consumer-oriented na sinasabi ni Donald, ay ganun kumikita. So, ang nakikita ko is that kailangan talaga yung ating mga small businesses should be provided with the funds to ensure that they will be able to develop. Now, kasi sinasabi natin lalo sa mga small businesses gusto talaga nilang to get into that, but the opportunities for them to succeed is very minimal. Now, just one classic example. Itong pagbibili ng bahay. one of the biggest dreams of the Filipino is always to own a house, di ba?
Of course.
Okay. Mayroon pa tayong growing middle class ngayon. I will grant that. Now we have also a slowly growing middle class. But let me tell you this, kahit na yung income ng growing middle class na yan will reach at 150,000 pesos a year, they will not still be able to buy a home. They will not still be able to achieve their dreams. Why? Do you know that it is the population, it is the people that really actually finance the developers in constructing homes? And they construct homes only for, not for the poor, but for the already wealthy. Bibili ka ng bahay dito sa Pilipinas, anong ginagawa ng developer? Hindi lamang pre-selling and you reserve a right. You will issue post-dated checks that will be paid monthly and will be fully paid in 5 or 6 years' time when the project is developed. And pinagmamalaki nila, interest-free. Pero pera mo yun, ginagamit. Bakit ka naman sisingilin lang eh? They do not fund the project itself. Kailangan they raise the money from the people. Now, what happens there at the end? Ang nangyayari dito, natapos mo ng binayaran, kung hindi nila nabenta lahat ng mga units, hindi natapos yung proyekto, you fully paid, you do not have the property, these are the risks. But this is exactly what I'm saying. Everything is, and Donald agrees with this, everything is consumer directed. If you would like to really make sure that the Filipino will have the opportunity to grow, will have the opportunity for wealth creation, we must provide them now. They should be the priority in giving assistance and sources of cheap funds. And I think our banks, our rich people, should be the first one to provide them this.
All right. Donald, would you care to react to such a situation, which seems to be a sorry situation?
I agree 100%. People must realize the SMEs need the support of government by way of efficient infrastructure so that they can deliver their goods to the market. Not only financing, but infrastructure must be there to help them. The big companies, they don't care. In fact, the harder it is, the better for them because they get to control the whole thing. So this is the thing that we, at least in the Philippine Chamber, in the next 2 years, we will focus on advocacy for SME, purely for SME. We're going to go all over the country. We are going to start reviewing what is needed. We are going to start demanding that a master plan be put in place for Leyte, Tacloban, and Ormoc. These are the kind of things, and we will go in there to help provide the livelihood that is necessary.
Really? Pero what makes the Philippines attractive to business, if indeed it is attractive?
Why do you say it's attractive? That's precisely what I'm saying. There's a lack of attraction at the moment.
At the moment?
At the moment. And you don't have the peace and order situation in place. You don't have the infrastructure in place. Your basic cost is higher than other countries. How can we be attractive?
Mm-hmm. So despite the business missions that have been visiting the Philippines, and despite the ballyhood public-private partnerships, all these are PowerPoint presentations?
What private partnership, private-public partnership? Where are the projects? You have only approved 2 so far.
So wala pa rin.
So where is it? And then you start talking about how do we move forward with this? You talk about the stock market. My friends, the stock market started to boom because the U.S. economy was in such a bad situation, and the U.S. government dumped money, cheap money, into their economy. That money found its way in investing in the Philippines because at that time it looked safer and more profitable. Today, the Central Bank of the United States saying, okay, we will now stop releasing cheap money. What happens? They now move all the money out. You have a stock market that was performing. Okay, so we did not do anything. We allowed foreign money to speculate in our market. At the end of the day, it's not the Filipino small investors who make money. It is the big funds who invested here, foreign funds.
So that's the situation, really. Okay. We have questions from the floor? Yes, Sol, please.
Sol Paul Bansi Bulletin and Pulitzer Center. Yung mga generation natin, alam natin yung the mouse that roared. That, it's not profitable to win a war against a giant country. It's better to lose a war or to be the enemy of a giant country. Look what happened to Japan and Germany after the war. The US had Marshall plans for them, but none for the Philippines. Kailan tayo matututo? Maigi pa yung mga kaaway. So, how do we change this attitude? How do we reverse it so that we think of ourselves first, as you pointed out? Legally or by media or however?
To whom is the question directed? Everyone? Okay. Norman?
Palagay ko ang pangangailangan natin ay isang estado, no, na kung saan we can be worthy of respect by the United States, no. Ang problema, alam mo, we are essentially beggars, and we cannot be choosers, no. Pero ang ibig ko sabihin dito, kailangan maiangat pa natin yung sarili nating bayan sa isang level to gain respect from powerful countries.
Jun, anong magic wand ang kailangan?
Actually, tama yung sinasabi ni Sol. We are really basically a country that is likened to a mouse that roars. Hindi naman tayo leon Ang problema natin ang yayabang pa talaga natin. I mean, these are things that we should discard. We have old habits that we must really discard. Tingnan mo yung we really need the structure that will enable our Filipino people to know what's really happening, transparency in every actions in government that's happening. I will predict, for instance, that the FOI will never be passed because our leaders are saying that FOI is making governance more complicated than it already is. And I think this is the problem. We want to conceal everything under the rug. We do not want our people to see what is the true picture. And when we do this, because our government is saying, hey, we're good, everything is fine, then we tend to roar, even if we're only like a mouse. So this kind of old mindset should really first be changed. And then when we start to think of ourselves as a people, where we really begin to think of our interests, what's good for us, then we will be able to assert ourselves even before the international community. Tingnan mo itong mga aids na dumarating sa atin after Yolanda. If sa kayabangan natin, sasabihin natin na yung mga only a select group of Filipinos will be able to manage this dahil yung iba corrupt, yung kayabangan na ganyan, this will not give us a good face abroad. I mean, one of the first things that happened to us was gusto magbibigay yung mga sa Australia, gusto magbibigay marami sa States, pero sinasabi, pupunta na daw ito sa corruption. And then our government fuels that because our government has an agenda. They would like to make sure that only a select group who will be able to propagate a patronage type of service to our people, which really further breeds corruption, is what we should preserve. This must change. This must be discarded.
Okay. Linggoy, you have a question? Linggoy of opinion.
Magandang umaga po kay Atty. Yasay. Kasi nabanggit niyo yung MILF, Mindanao. Ngayon po ay bagong taon. Sa bagong taon, may bagong firearms law kung saan maraming bagong requisitos na maraming dagdag na kailangan gawin at bayaran ng mga sumusunod sa batas. Ang tanong ko po, itong firearms law, i-implement ba sa Mindanao?
Ang alin?
Itong bagong firearms law at yung bagong regulations, yung po, ngayon po, dalawa na lisensya. May lisensya na po yung baril, may lisensya yung tao. Ginaya po yung LTO Dahil sa LTO, malaking kita. Yung firearms and explosives unit, maliit lang yung kita. Dahil maraming hindi nagre-renew, walang firearms license fee. Hindi kagaya ng auto, tumatakbo sa labas, kailangan mag-renew. Sa firearms, tapos nakatago sa bahay, hindi re-renew. Maliit yung pera. Ngayon, ginaya nila yung LTO, merong lisensya for the person, merong lisensya for the firearm. Ngayon, kung mag-expire ng isang araw, yung lisensya ng isang firearm, lahat ng firearm mo, kanselado ang lisensya. Eh di magiging criminal po ako. Kasi marami akong firearm, maraming red tape, wala akong panahon, masakit ang tuhod ko, hindi ako makapila, nag-expire yung firearm license ko. Dati, it's just a matter of, yung good intention naman eh. Naka-record naman yung barrel, di ba? Pag nagbayad ka naman, babayad ka ng multa.
Okay.
Pero ngayon, ang tanong ko, ito ba ma-implement sa Mindanao?
Para naman gusto mo na indictment on Mar Rojas. DILG yun. Yes, John.
Okay. Actually, ang problema tayo, the basic general problem that we have is we do have a lot of laws, but our problem is one of enforcement. Now, specifically itong new laws that will aim at gun control, may implement ba ito sa Mindanao? Now, if I look at it from the standpoint sa sitwasyon sa Mindanao, as it is now, ay hindi mo talaga ma-implement dahil peace and order in Mindanao is bad, and people need these firearms to defend themselves. You know, kung ang mga innocent, mga babait na tao hindi makakaroon ng baril at yung mga criminal elements ang silang pwede, hindi mo pwedeng ma-enforce yung batas na yan sa Mindanao cities. People would rather be illegal. Aywan ko what they will do. Maybe at the end of the day, bayaran mo yung sinong enforcement authority, hindi mo ma-enforce yung batas because from a practical viewpoint, yun ang mangyayari. But to me, a big problem arises when you have the Bangsamoro situation come in, where even peace and order will be exclusively the domain of the Bangsamoro, political subdivision, including threats to domestic peace. So, exclusive yan ng Bangsamoro. Now, tayo, how will we enforce that law to everybody? Magiging exempt na naman ba ang Bangsamoro insofar as these gun control laws are concerned? Because they have their own, autonomous status that is way far ahead than the autonomous status that we are giving to our local government unit. So this is a problem. I will say in answer to your question, hindi natin may implement yan. But I like the law. I mean, to me, the law is okay if only we can enforce it. But we will not be able to enforce it because we see a lot of inconsistent things that we are doing that would also prevent its proper enforcement.
I would like to inform everyone that the new gun law is a gun proliferation law. It is not a gun control law. No? Why? Section 7, if I am not mistaken, a certain article of the gun law provides for 5 types of licenses. No? Type 1, not more than 2 firearms. Type 2, not more than 5 firearms. Type 3, not more than 10 firearms. Type 4, not more than 15 firearms. And Type 5, more than 15 firearms.
So you have a security agency or a private army?
Yes. Now, what I am trying to say here is this. No? This is clearly a law that serves the interest of 1% of the total population of the Philippines. No? If we are 100 million people, no, 99 million do not own guns. 99 million do not own guns. So ito, in order to preserve their own interest of having guns, they adopt this kind of policy. And that is the reason why we have high crime rates. No? In fact, every time, during elections, every time the gun ban is implemented by COMELEC, crime rate goes down, no? And recently, noong 2010, during the implementation of the gun ban, and wherein the Philippine National Police conducted a nationwide gathering of statistics on gun deaths and violence, crime rates went down by 70%, no? stricter gun control should be able to aid, no, our police enforcers in peacekeeping efforts. Yes, it should end private armies.
Okay.
It should keep in jail criminals, you know, and all these things. So I think the other thing that we need to amend the new gun law, and we are bringing that to Congress, not with the hope, no, that Congress will pass it, but to elevate the level of public
discussion.
debate on this issue.
Yes. I would like to take the opportunity. See, Dong Dong from China is here. Dong Dong, in China, are you allowed to have guns? Police, law enforcement lang. Pero ordinary mortals like us, even fake guns are illegal. Okay. Air guns are not allowed. Okay. And that's China. Okay. Thank you very much for the information. Linggoy, please go ahead.
Sa bagong taon, gusto kong magtanong tungkol sa isang, sabihin natin, baka bagong pananaw. Pero in relation to class legislation, tanong ko kay Atty. Yasay, pwede kayang, para hindi na tayo ng bobola, pagpasa ng bagong batas tungkol sa firearms, applicable lang sa Luzon at Visayas. Number one. Pangalawa, kung halimbawa magpapasa tayo ng EPIRA, gawin ng good for Luzon, Visayas, huwag na sa Mindanao. So sa Mindanao, iba yung firearms law. Sa Mindanao, iba yung patakaran ng energy production and distribution. Pwede ba yun?
Magandang tanong yan. For the sake of discussion, June, please.
Ayon sa saligid batas natin ngayon, hindi pwede. Kung gustong gawin ng gobyerno yan, ay amendihin muna yung ating saligang batas. Ay, ang problema natin, ay inuuna natin, we're putting the cart in front of the horse. And that's the problem. Remember before, when the Bangsamoro bill was presented and the treaty was being ratified in Malaysia, Pingoy, Governor, what's his name?
Piñol.
Governor
Piñol.
Piñol,
Manny
in
Piñol.
North Cotabato filed the case and the Supreme Court said illegal and constitutional. O ngayon, in deference to Pinoy, dahil sinasabi ni Pinoy, anyway, negotiations pa lang ito, wag munang patayin natin. Wag muna kayo pumunta sa korte. But the truth of the matter is that once we have firmed up all of these agreements, you cannot even implement it. You cannot even pass the Organic Act. You cannot even start that process unless you first amend. Now, narinig natin ngayon, mga members ng Kongreso na sinasabi nilang, let's amend the Constitution for the economic provisions. Personally, I welcome that. But I am also being worried because I see that Pinoy is against it. But Pinoy also knows that he will have, if he is really sincere in pushing through with this peace treaty, he will have to amend the Constitution. Is this a ploy at which we were fast-tracking the amendments of the Constitution under the guise of saying that we will be doing this to amend the economic provisions, when in fact the purpose will be to ensure that Congress will also amend the Constitution to allow for a political subdivision like Bangsamoro to exist. So this is the problem. You cannot do it now, Linggoy. You will have to amend the Constitution.
All right. Norman, brief reaction.
Okay. If you want dramatic change in the peace and order situation in our country, this is what I will do if I am president. No?
If you are Secretary Rojas.
Yes.
of
So
the ALG.
if I am number one, limit the ownership of firearms to one. Number two, it should only be kept in your residence. No permits to carry outside of residence. Number three, make it a criminal offense, punishable by 12 to 20 years in prison without bail. Number three, provide for decommissioning.
Or without parole.
Without parole, yeah. Provide for decommissioning of firearms, no? And create an agency in the Philippine National Police that is focused only on siphoning off illegal firearms. Number five, provide general amnesty with no questions asked and with financial rewards for those who will surrender their firearms. We had to bring down
the demand for firearms in this country. And these are policies that will discourage, encourage criminalism in this country.
Father Ben,
Sigurado magtatanong dyan yung mga responsible gun owners. How can they protect themselves from criminals and police criminals?
Ito na nga yun no? Again, this is an issue of common good. This is an issue of common good. Ang problema natin, sana if we have good peace and order situation with this kind of policy now, fine, no? But we don't, no? And those quote-unquote gun-responsible owners, no, who have permits to carry, comprise siguro 1/4% of the population. 1/4%. Those with permit to carry. The sad thing is, the Philippine National Police isn't even sure how many civilians have permits to carry because it is only the chief of the PNP chief who issues that and it is not on record in the Philippine National Police.
I may caution you about your statement. If we cannot even be sure of the total casualties in Tacloban, how can we be sure of firearms with permits? No? Okay, yes? Yes, Nandi.
Sa America, from the United States, or in the United States, there are many things, good things that we can imitate. Like punctuality is an American trait. Candor is an American trait. But why in heaven's name did we have to imitate the bad ones on violence, on gun culture?
That is a very good question.
That's another point. Then, Father Benny said, ang rason ng mga pro-gun is, how can I defend myself against criminals or so many here in the country? I will answer that question by asking another question. How can we defend myself, or how can I defend myself against guns? Because the truth about the gun is, it is made to kill and to kill, not to prolong life.
Okay. Very well. Nandi, let me refer you to a case about the other day. A bus driver was shot and killed by a man riding in a luxury van because of a traffic altercation somewhere, because of the traffic caused by reblocking, if I'm not mistaken, and sale at SM Rosales. Business yun.
Raise here is that not too many people is that every day there are people, small people, unknown people who are killed by guns. Away dyan, may nag-suicide, binaril, and the proof of that is get a tabloid every day. I have 5 copies of the tabloid, I get 2 tabloids every day. And you can see reported killings here, there and there. Naroon na lahat, every day. Another point is this. I think we're approaching the question of peace in the wrong way. Even in the Constitution, which says peace and order. In his book, The City of God, St. Augustine said, peace is tranquility produced by order. Dapat order and peace. There can be no peace without order. That's why we're the way we are. In government, in business, even in the matter of peace in the country, we forget order. That's all I want to say.
I think you really raise a very good point, no? Manny, no?
Nandi.
Yeah. You know, effects of guns in the hands of members of society has really been bad, no? Whether it's in the United States or even in the Philippines. But if you will look at the difference between the United States and in the Philippines, is that the basis for the Americans to own guns is a constitutional provision. They have a provision which says the right to bear arms. But if you would look at the historical basis for that constitutional provision, in fact, that was hard fought when the Americans drafted their constitution. That was very hard fought. There was no there was no compromise on that thing. We will not approve the Constitution if you do not allow that. It was for purposes of preventing any foreign invaders from coming in so that the militia will have that right to bear arms. But then, they have interpreted that right to bear arms in a very, well, it has evolved, and now it's being abused. And so you see the effects of owning guns is still the same. In the Philippines, there is no such right. Now, our government rests on the predicate that it is the duty of government to ensure peace and order in society and to secure the citizens, safety in their homes and safety in their lives. This is part of the commitment between government to the people, and in turn the people will also comply with their civic duties, including the payment of taxes. But therefore, it is very easy. It is very, very easy for Congress to come up with the appropriate measures for responsible gun control, taking into account the realities. I am for total ban. Quite frankly, I don't think that should be allowed. But yet, I also recognize, as you pointed out, talagang in certain areas, in many areas in fact, not only certain, the citizen must protect themselves against criminal elements, against warlords. The problem is that gun control in the Philippines is harsh against the innocent people who would like to defend themselves but cannot be enforced by the criminal elements, that justifies the citizens to have guns. And this is the problem. And I think we should really do something about it.
Simple gun control. Why? Because the number one problem is the members of Congress.
Who are also armed.
Armed. Imagine, common gun ban. The idea is to reduce gun violence. That's why there's a gun ban. Your election video, nobody should carry a firearm except a uniformed man on duty.
Yes.
How come? The defect of the gun ban law is it provides exemption. The Commonwealth is giving the authority to grant exemption to candidates who wish to have bodyguards because they said their lives are under threat. But for heaven's sake, if your life is under threat, don't run for public office.
Very good.
And the Commission of Elections to say, first question they should ask a candidate, is your life under threat? If they say no, then you can run. If you are under threat, don't run. It's political will, and I don't take this suggestion that I have a right to defend myself because the government's responsibility is to protect the people. Preservation of order and peace is the primary duty of government, not to give food to every mouth.
Okay. Well said, Nandi. Thank you. I just got an assurance from Donald D. No gun dealer is a registered member of PCCI. Okay? So, here we go.
Well, in the case of the Philippines, about 25 years ago, that was also a problem. Because the only time I had lunch with Cardinal C, just before my appointment with him, the gun control advocates or the ban gun advocates had an appointment with him. But they only had coffee in his office. In my case, I had lunch with him in the patio. And since Cardinal Sin was hungry, after having prayers, he wanted to dive into his soup. And I said, Your Eminence, just a while. He said, why, my son? I said, I have to confess before we eat. Why? Because I have many sins. Why? He said, because I have many guns. Oh, bless you, my son, bless you. So that's the problem is that the church, they bless the bandigan, they also bless the...
Okay, so what you're saying is the church and the church leaders should be consistent. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Well taken. All right. We have more questions from the floor. Okay. Yes, Nandi. Sige, one last point. All right. Masaya itong discussion natin.
The only people who are happy when there is disorder are the gun dealers and the gun manufacturers.
That's good business, really. Okay. Have more questions? I'd like to ask our members of the panel, ano yung unsolicited advice ninyo at para kanino. Sapagkat gusto nating maging happy ang 2014, kanino ninyo ibibigay ang inyong payo at bakit? Simulan natin kay Norman. Anong unsolicited advice? Merong presidente nung galit sa unsolicited advice.
Unsolicited advice. Ang unsolicited advice ko siguro para sa simbahan natin, ano? Na yung mga panawagan nila, particular sa tungkol sa lipunan, tungkol sa governance, tungkol sa politika, kailangan mabigyan nila ng mas angkop na aksyon pa, no? At I think there is also a need for the church to reform or modify its priorities, no? Modify its priorities from halimbawa mga outreach programs, scholarships, community work to one that addresses systemic change in our country.
Thank you very much. Palagi ko si Padre Benny, ang kanya namang unsolicited advice para sa laiko. ano ba?
Hindi, sa government ako, sa government.
Sige po.
Solicited advice sana yung focus sa renewable energy. Kasi sinabi na ni Mr. D kanina yung problem natin with energy. We have so much potential with regards to renewable energy. And then we already have the Republic Act on the renewable energy. Ang pinagtataka ko, bakit supposed to be, dahil doon, ang pondo dapat i-focus na. And also, the future of the world really is renewable energy. Recently, China had made a 1 gigawatt solar energy program. Talagang darating ang panahon, ang oil and coal, magmawawala yan. And we will have to depend on renewable energies. The beauty is that we have all the potentials for renewable energy. We are the second in terms of geothermal potentials. Unfortunately, we're not able to take advantage of it. So, sana this government, we look forward to the future. Umpisahan na ngayon to support our renewable energies. And then, sabi nga ng ating mga businessmen, we will be very attractive if we have a very stable energy supply.
Not necessarily Bataan nuclear power plant.
No, we don't need that.
Okay.
Renewable energy lang.
Okay. Mabuti binanggit niya. Attorney Yasay, please. What's your unsolicited advice at para kanino at bakit?
Ako,
Beauty contest.
kay Pinoy, dalawa lamang at kayang-kaya niyang gagawin kung gusto niya. And this is something that he must do that is dependent solely on him. Wala na siyang iisipin pa. And if he does it, it will define him as one of our great leaders. Even if pabayaan niya ng economics, pabayaan niya ng mga iba. Only on these two, because this is the centerpiece of what he really wanted to achieve. One is first to ensure transparency in governance, and therefore he must guarantee the passage of FOI in 2014. Yan ang napakahalaga sa lahat. Number two, he really started the fight against corruption, and we know that 60% of corruption is sourced from pork barrel funds. He abolishes pork barrel altogether. We don't need it. This is one practice that we copied from the Americans, but we did not copy it in the manner that it should be copied. We, in fact, distorted it. The president has the biggest pork barrel funds that encourages patronage, politics, which is also the source of corruption. Hindi pwede yan. This he can do. And if he has the political will. If he will not do this, because time is running out, andito, kaya-kayang gagawin yan in 2014, I think that will spell the difference whether he will be revered and remembered as great as his mother and his father. Thank you.
All right. Ginam Donald D, please.
Sa akin, I recall when he was considering to run for president, he had a retreat somewhere, right?
Yes, in Zamboanga.
Yeah. So I'd like to suggest to him that he calls his cabinet and some people, and that they should reflect and come out with a definition of what is national interest. If we all agree what is our national interest, we can easily evolve our direction and our plan on how we will move this country forward.
Is that all? Have any message about smuggling? And the like?
Well, it's obviously if they kasama yun eh. Kasama yun eh. Oh.
Okay, hindi lang natin alam kung sino may interest doon. Okay. May pahabol yung taga-interaction. Sige, please. Medyo na-traffic yata sa Quiapo. Please go ahead.
Ang tanong ko lang po kung wala, yung politicking ba, yung pamumulitika sa gobyerno, nasa administrasyon or sa cabinet, di ba dapat tigil na muna yan, then mag-focus si Pinoy sa economy, sa social services, and other na dapat may bigay sa tao bayan?
So, politicking. Okay? Yung ang apelyido mo ganito. Apelyido ni ganito, ganito.
Dahil Romualdez ka, Aquino yung presidente. Okay.
Would you care to briefly react on this? Let's start again with Norman. Can we put a stop to politicking and focus on the economy and the other salient government problems?
Yes, I agree with that, no? And dapat rin para maiwasan yung opportunities for politicking, kailangan din yung at isa na diyan yung budget natin, ano? Kailangan alisin nga yung mga pork barrel, yung mga discretionary items ng presidente para nawawala yung politicking. Kung ito nakaayon na sa isang lugar, sa isang specific na proyekto na hindi mo na pwedeng galawin, no? Unless sabi sa konstitusyon natin, unless merong savings doon, hindi mo pwedeng i-rechannel or i-reallocate sa iba, no? So kung year in year out firmly allocated ang bawat piso na nagagastusin ng pamahalaan sa isang lugar, sa isang specific na then yung opportunities for politicking mawawala.
Okay. Norman is the president of Kapatiran and SecGen of Gunless Society. Father Benny.
Sa akin yung politicking kasi is self-preservation yan eh. Gusto mong ipalitin yung sarili mo. But kung talagang gusto mong to preserve yourself is to serve other people. Nung bata ako, ang mga kandidato pag pumunta umilibot, iboto niyo po ang inyong lingkod. Sabihin, they're here to serve. Pero iba na kasi ngayon eh. Iboto niyo kasi ako ang paglilingkuran niyo, baliktad na. So that the word service had changed its meaning. Service means to serve the people. Ngayon ay to serve the one who's governing the people. Pero kung sabi nga ni Mr. D, no, yung national interest mahalaga at ang nasa isip ng politiko ay yung kabutihan ng kanyang sambayanan, he will really preserve himself.
Yes, please.
Alam mo, yung politics per se ay hindi masama para sa bayan yan. Dapat pag-uusapan talaga natin yan dahil yung mga pagbabago ay nagmumula sa political decisions eh. Ang pag-iwasan natin ng husto ay yung partisan politics. Yun ang mahirap pag in fact, yung ating konstitusyon ay sinasabi na sa presidente 6 years, no re-election para iwasan yung partisan politics. Yung kaso ay ganun pa rin yung mga sinasabing ikaw ay Aquino, ako ay Romualdez, no? Mga ganyan na I agree na kailangan na iwasan natin yung partisan political concerns na i-discuss. Ang problema is ngayon 2014, dahil malapit na yung 2016, everybody is going to again start the fireworks in partisan political activity. Tingnan mo yung pag-appoint ni Ping Lacson. Ping Lacson, to my mind, otoridad ng presidente yan when he would like to appoint somebody. Puro ang perception ng tao, ina-appoint nila si Ping Lacson dahil ay maybe gearing him up for the 2016 elections. To me, the issue about appointing Ping Lacson is not so much about because he is Ping Lacson or he is going to be a presidential candidate in 2016 to prop him up for that. The important thing is that what is he going to do? Hindi natin dinefine yung functions ni Ping Lacson eh. We just say that he is one guy who will be very efficient, who will be able to get things done. This is his record. Wala siyang dumi sa PDAP, and so on and so forth. But the point is, in fairness to Ping Lacson, what is he supposed to do? How will that disenfranchise our local government leaders in terms of their functions under the Local Government Act? How will even that gel with the functions of the National Coordinating Disaster Council? We did not define that. Yung rehabilitation, sir, under the law. That's supposed to be the National Disaster Coordinating Council's job. To be led by the NEDA secretary. But you see, binigay mo yung function yan. Again, that's partisan politics, the way I see it. Yan, iiwasan natin. And I think the president should take the lead dahil wala naman siyang interest to be re-elected. Unless kung mayroong hidden agenda. Hindi natin alam.
Hindi natin makikita yun dahil hidden. Alright. Yes, please, Donald.
The saddest part about the present administration is that, the way it was structured, already partisan politics was involved. The president should not, hindi dapat niya pairal yung kanyang utang na loob. He seems to think na may utang na loob siya sa isang tao dahil hindi tinuloy yung pagkakandidato sa presidency at nilagay sa kabinete. So what happens is, automatically, the cabinet, and even he himself has become so divisive. He has played a role no longer as president of the country, a president for all. And that's the reason why you have partisan politics in his administration. I hope he will stop that right away.
Okay?
One follow-up.
Sige.
Present cabinet, thus the present cabinet should tender their courtesy resignation to the president for performance audit ng kanilang mga ginawa. Kasi marami ng, alam naman natin, maraming mga cabinet members na pumalpak. Especially dun sa pork barrel, pinili lang yung kinasuhan. Alam naman natin yung sa COA report, napakarami ng congressman and whoever's. Tapos si Pitilla, hanggang ngayon, wala pa daw ilaw sa Tacloban. So, mga ganun. Tapos, yung bank houses, 39,000, isang napakaliit na...
Hindi natin alam kasi yan kung yun ay Vietnamese dog. Baka naman rupiah. So, yun ang mga tanong mo.
Ang tanong ko lang po, yung anong performance ano assessment nyo sa performance ng present cabinet? Kailangan ba nila na mag-file ng courtesy resignation?
Okay.
For performance audit?
Thank you. Father Benny. Simulan natin.
Sa akin, command responsibility kasi yan eh. Kaya nga sila cabinet, siyang may gusto nun. Pero yun nga, if we can suggest to him na palitan ito, still it's his call. So but for me, it's not about the cabinet member, it's about the president. So command responsibility, he takes responsibility, so siyang sasagot nun.
Okay. Thank you.
Ako, I'm against it because I think it's just for show. I mean, if the president allows it, will he earn good points for that? That to me is not the point. The point is whether these cabinet officials perform well or not, or whether or not this cabinet are held accountable. That is the job of a particular agency of government in seeing that accountability and to make sure that they do their jobs properly. And yan ang mahalaga sa lahat. Whether the important thing is they should be made accountable for their actions. Mas maganda nga kung nandyan pa sila so that, talagang ang focus will be on them. But for you to say na they should tender their courtesy resignation so that the president they can be properly made accountable for their misdeeds, that to me is for show. Because if the president does it, and then we'll be happy, we think that he performed well. I don't think that's the point.
And besides, if they will file the resignation through text message, di ba? May ganun eh. Hindi pinayagan ng presidente. Yes, Mr. Donald B.
Well, I agree with Father. It's really the call of the president, and unfortunately, at this point, where we saw what happened to the lady in land transportation, we saw what happened in former Undersecretary Bruno in local government. Those things, for as long as the president will act the way he's acting now, we will never solve the problem. It's not fair to ask for courtesy resignation from the cabinet because the cabinet cannot function well anyway with such a big issue.
Nanti? Yes, please.
Ito ay hindi is an appeal.
It's an appeal.
Appeal. Pakiusap. Begging. Pagmamakaawa. Na it will not cost him centavo. And he will not violate a law. He will not need Congress to do it. If you see, he will only fulfill his promise that he would continue the unfinished work of his mother. Why did they say that? Noong July 6 or July 2, 1991, Magwan was shot by Rolito Go. 13 days later, Hoffman was shot by Tiangki. And there was so much publicity. And during those shootings, a gun control bill was filed, was being discussed, one in the House and one in the Senate. So nung nangyari yun, siguro dahil si Cory, President Cory, somebody advised her, certify those, consolidate these two bills into one, and certify it to Congress as urgent. Because the time her term was about to end.
Yes.
Cory did that, and he even instructed her secretary, Drilon, at that time, to do the message. After the message was sent to Congress, to the Senate approved it right away.
And the House did not.
But in the House, unfortunately, the bill was gunned down
By whom?
by the House Committee on Public Order and Security, chaired by her own brother. Kaya, hindi natuloy yung batas. And also, on January 1, 1990, President Cory declared that the 1990s be a decade of peace. And she expressed support for the gunless society, although we were small, and she said, mere tribe increase. So that's why, Mr. President, ang request ko sa iyo, by your signature, under the law, you can suspend the issuance of permit to carry. But commission the government to get hold of all those firearms, and that can be done if there's a political will.
Happy naman ang 2014. You know, when the Chinese says, may you live in interesting times, it's more of a curse than a blessing. But I would like to believe that we are all blessed. First, we still have our Tapatan sa Aristocrat, and then you're still very much around. So I'd like to thank everyone for taking time out to be here. Happy New Year, everyone!